Okay, and we're off. So over to you, Claire.
Hello and welcome. So as I was saying earlier, I just want to dispel some of the myths, give you a couple of tools that you can use on your own websites if you have one, and just tell you about some of the things that Google does to make decisions. It will be quite a lot of information that I'm going to give today, but I am also willing to share the slides. So afterwards, if you put your email address in the chat box, I can send you the slides from this as well. So there's some things that you can try. I recommend that you don't try it out whilst I'm doing the talk, because especially if you're on a mobile phone device or something, or a tablet, it makes it difficult to get back to the talk again, because you go off to the internet and then Zoom disappears somewhere. And so again, like I said, I will share the slides with that information on, so you can go off and have a little go of it with your own website. And because this was originally put together for when I was doing face-to-face talks, so people would try it as I was telling them, but it doesn't work. It doesn't quite translate the same way over Zoom with that. I keep looking over there because that's where my screen is with the talk on, by the way. So if you see me looking over there, that's why, because I've got two screens. So I'm just going to start it now. Yeah, so if you have any questions, just jot it down on a piece of paper or something, and I'll cover them at the end. So I need to share screen. Okay. So what happens for me now is that you all disappear and I just get the slideshow coming up. So, okay, so Google. Everybody's heard of Google, right? So Google is what's known as a browser. So it searches the internet for content. You all know how to use it. You type something in the search and it comes up with some answers, which are usually, well, always pages from the internet. So a website is made up of multiple pages and posts, which Google also calls those pages, just for confusion's sake. And so it will find information on that page to display, hopefully, that will answer the question or query that you've typed into Google. So it serves three primary functions. What Google does is it crawls the internet, and I'll explain a bit more about how it does that in a minute. It indexes the internet. No mean feat, I can tell you, there's a lot of information there. And then it ranks it. So when it's crawling, it's looking at the internet for content. So it's looking for more pages to index. When it's indexing, it's storing and organizing the content that it finds. And when it ranks it, it's providing bits of that information that best answers the searcher's query in the order that it feels is most relevant. So how does it do that? It uses a computer algorithm or artificial intelligence called a bot. It's also known as a spider. And it looks at each page that it wants to index. It looks on the page for links to other pages, and it follows them as well to look for new content. When you see this little icon, it means it's something that you could do yourself if you have access to your website content. So can Google actually find your website pages in order to crawl them? You can easily check which pages on your website Google has indexed. So you can go to Google and you can check to see if your website has been indexed by Google. So if it's found the page and has logged the content on it. So to do that, you put in site : and then the name of your website. So in this instance, the website is jello.com, I used as an example. So it's site : jello.com, or therapists-network.com for our website, and so any of your own. And when you do that, it will come up with a list of search results, which are only related to your website. And these are the ones that it has looked at. So if there's stuff there that's missing that you would expect to see, then you know it hasn't been indexed for some reason. And I will tell you what it looks for in a bit. It also will show you how many results. So it says here about 85 results. So if you know you've got a website with 300 pages and you only get 100, you know that 100 pages have been looked at by Google or indexed. So jello.com here has about 85 pages. It's either not a big website or it's not been indexed yet. So can Google crawl through your content to find more content? Well, the spider needs links on your pages in order to do that. And links can be things like a navigation menu, suggested other reading. I'm sure you've probably seen that on things like Huffington Post or news sites where you get to the bottom of an article you're reading and it says, oh, you might like these other posts, you might like to look at these other ones. And links within your text that go to other relevant content. So you may have read something on the internet before where you look at the page and it's got something with a line underneath it and you click it and that will take you to somewhere else. That's a linked piece of text. So this was the Find Therapy Here website in an earlier incantation a long time ago. And so examples of links that can be found on this post, this is a blog post, is that you can have them in the navigation menu. So they will take you to different parts of the website. Most people have those on their websites. You can have it in the other suggested reading. So that's other posts that you might like to read is on this particular website example. You can also have one that takes you to somebody else's website. There's one here that's a link that takes you to Facebook and the Facebook page. And they may also be links that take you to categories that are on your website. So this one's all articles, body health articles and mind health articles. So that would take you to a list of other articles of those category. So this is how Google interprets and stores your pages, by using links and navigating around your website to find the information. But just because it can doesn't mean it will. So it's a bit fussy. Common mistakes that people make is that they may have a menu on their desktop that's different on the mobile version. So it will look different on most mobile phones. Some have a button and it brings down the menu, but those items that are on the menu should be the same as if they look at it on a computer. So one thing that some poor website designers do is they'll say, for instance, you'll have home and contact me on the website, and then you look at it on a mobile and it's just got contact me and blog, and the home button is missing or something like that. So they should match, the information should match. You might have user-specific personalization on a big website that has multiple users. This isn't really going to be relevant for most therapists. And that's something that you would need a web designer to sort out for you. Just said that. There you go. And you might have broken links. So have you ever been to a page on a website and you've clicked it and it's gone 404? Information not found here, please search again or go home. Yeah, really annoying, isn't it? Google doesn't like those either. So you might have some of those on your website and it's worth checking and getting those fixed if you do. If you have access to your own content, it may be something that you can do yourself. So I can show you now a website that you can use to check if your website has broken links. And it's called brokenlinkcheck.com. And I've got an example here of somebody's website that I did for them. It's a little video. So you just put in the security code, put in the website address, your website address, and then click Find Broken Links. And so what it's done here is it's found a broken link, which is a contact link. So on this particular example, it says that the link is called Contact 20% 20 Us. So I've clicked on the bit at the side that says URL, and I'm going to go down and try and find any Contact Us buttons. And so what you can do is you can use that to go through the information and find where it was broken. You can also, once you've checked for broken links, you can go and have a look and find out when did Google last index any of your pages. So not only can you find out what was indexed, you can also find out when it did it. So if you've recently made any changes to your website, or you've got a brand new website, it may be that Google hasn't caught up with that new information yet, so you can check. So you can put in, as before, site, colon, and the name of your website. And as before, it will show you which pages have been indexed. And then if you go down to one of the links that comes up in the search results, you'll see a little triangle, a downwards facing triangle next to the link. If you click cached, it will tell you the last time it looked at that page. And it will also tell you what that page looks for. So it's just loading it. And then it gives you a snapshot of what Google saw last time it looked at that page. So what you can do is, if you have someone who's designed your website for you, you can ask them to submit a new index to Google, and Google will put the right information in. Or you can just wait. Google will usually catch up within a couple of months. If you cannot see the page that you want to when you enter siteyourdomain.com, then it's not been indexed. Google just doesn't know it exists. You would need to create something called a site index and submit it to Google. This is something a web developer or an SEO expert can do for you. If you are using WordPress for your website, is anybody using WordPress here? Okay, if you're using WordPress, there's a plugin called Yoast that will do it for you, which is quite handy. You can use an index file, or your web developer can use an index file to tell Google which pages you want to index. So it's really good idea at some point to ask them to remove from the index any pages that you don't want Google to look at, such as a login page, the one that you go to log in to go to your information at the back of your website. You may have like terms and conditions or privacy policy. We don't really need those showing up in search results. They're not really relevant to anybody until they choose to look at it. And as I said, if you have a WordPress website, then there's some excellent plugins that can allow you to do it yourself for free. So the ever-changing goalposts of Google. So Google actually changes what they look for, usually once a year. So the search engines, they want to provide users with the most useful answer to their search and in the most useful format. And Google has changed a lot of those over the years. So it used to be they'd just give you a list of results, but there's all sorts of different places now where you can put your information and Google can find it. So obviously there's the main search results. And the great news, a lot of this you can control if you have access to your own content. And at the end, if you don't have access to your own content, I am going to give you a tip that you can use that will help you get boosted on Google. So how does Google make these decisions? How on earth does it look at these billions of websites and decide which ones it's going to provide as a result when you write in your search? So it uses another piece of software, another algorithm or artificial intelligence called PageRank. Interestingly, this has got nothing to do with the page itself. It's named after its creator, Larry Page. So don't get confused if you ever hear that word PageRank. So PageRank, it measures links. So like we said before, how many links have you got? Do they go to the place they say they're going to go to? Are people linking to your website from other websites? Directories are good for this. It uses something called Rank Brain, which is a learning artificial intelligence. So it is a piece of software that thinks for itself. So yeah, we're talking Terminator 2 here. No, there's no robots, but it learns users' behavior. So every time you use Google, it is watching and it is learning how you use it and making changes to Google along the way to improve itself. And it looks at content. So what have you actually written? And it looks at something called Eat, which is nothing to do with restaurants. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. So links are the content linked within your site. content that goes to other sites, or content that comes to your site from another site, such as a directory listing. The RankBrain learns how users behave on search results and adjusts itself accordingly. With your content, it'll look at whether somebody's clicked to view your content. So when Google produces that list of results, it will take notice if you click on it and will rank that website you've clicked on accordingly. It will take notice of how much time a user is on your page for. So are they actually reading it? It will look at something called bounce rate. So when they've looked at that page, do they then stop looking and close the website? Or do they continue on your website and look at other pieces of content you've provided? And it looks at something called pogo sticking. And this isn't anything you can do anything about. So pogo sticking is basically, and we've probably all done it, is when Google produces a result and you go, oh no, that's not right. And you click straight back to the search results, maybe type in something different because you didn't get quite what you was looking for. Google also learns from that as its own mistake and corrects it as it goes along. And we look at EAT. So EAT stands for expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. This was a relatively new update that came in 2018, and it crashed the counselling directory and a lot of other wellbeing websites, including most therapists I know. So this was really and is really important to therapists because it's measured against something called YMYL, which stands for your money or your life. And there's more on that later because it's really relevant and valid to you guys. And breathe. Lots of information, I know. I apologise. I will send it all to you later. So very important, one of the most important things is links. There's two different types. There's backlinks, which is where you link from a website to another website and vice versa. They're known on your website as inbound links. They're crucial because they are your online word of mouth. So it's a really good idea to write content or to produce something for another website that they will link to you. It's important that that website you're doing it with is also a good quality, well-known website. So writing an article for our directory or counselling directory or psychotherapy today or whichever it is that you're on is a good way to get some good backlinks. It used to be people used to cheat just by going on every directory they could find, but Google knows that. So yale.com is another good one because it's well known and ranks highly. But please, whatever you do, if they phone you and say, we can give you some personal advice, say no thanks, because they're just trying to sell you their upgraded rubbish and it doesn't actually make any difference. I tried it. I fell for it. So also, we've got internal links. So these are ones that are from one page on your website that go to another page on your website. And these are what allow Google, the spider, to crawl through your site and find the content. If it doesn't have any links on your website, then your pages won't get indexed because it won't know they exist. So RankBrain learns a searcher's behavior. So when you type things into Google, it's learning about what you've typed, how long you're looking at things for, where you go afterwards. It's complicated. It's been built over the last 20 years and it's very, very clever. It's actually got to the point now where it understands tone of voice in writing and can tell if somebody has been ghostwriting content or not. So it'll know if the content's yours or not. Don't be scared by that. It doesn't punish you for it or anything. It's just learning so that it can produce the right search results. And it's how Google has stayed top of their game. I mean, they've got 96% of the market share for searches. Who uses Bing here? Anyone? No? Yahoo? No? No. Google? Yes, exactly. And that's how they've done it, is by having this really clever piece of software and not telling anybody what they do. So, and it learns searchers' behavior. It understands language patterns, and it wants to provide the best personal user experience and information for searchers who might land on your page, because that's how Google gets paid, by producing the right information. Also very important is your content. So You'll hear a lot of SEO people talking about keywords. It can be really easy to get that wrong. And I just always say to people, don't panic about it. Keywords are important, but Google understands them, whether or not you've intentionally put them in or not. So the best way that you can control your own Google results is by writing content, producing things that you put on your own website that your users would be interested in, will solve their problems or answer their questions. So I don't know if you've ever spent any time reading articles on a website, but they're usually something that you're interested in that might give you some free advice or answer a question you've got. Quite often I find with therapists' websites as well, is that people are afraid of what might happen when they come to therapy. So they might have an incorrect idea that they've got to tell you all their secrets and that you will call them mad if you're a talking therapist. Julie, you've written us an article before about people misunderstanding hypnotherapy and stage hypnosis. And they think you're going to take over their brain and make them cluck like a chicken and things like that. So writing things about that will allay people's fears about what you do is also really, really good, because if they come across your website, it will increase your trustworthiness and your authority because you know what you're talking about. So your content is more than just words. It's your images, the design of your website, any videos that you might use. It's everything that a user consumes while it's on your site. Google can't actually view videos or listen to audio yet. I think it's probably about another year or two before it can do that. So it's always good to have some writing alongside any pictures or videos that you do. But it does encourage your user to hang around on your website longer, and Google does monitor that. So every bit of content and how your website is laid out is important. The focus is on user satisfaction. So contrary to popular belief, there are no strict rules on what you put in something called header tags. So you might read articles that say you have to make your website title have something called a power word, and it has to produce an emotion, and it must have a number in it. That's what we call clickbait. That's encouraging users to click on it because, and I'm sure some people may have done that. So like the top 10 ways that your dog might fart in the night or something like that. And you're like, what was that about? And you click it. That's all right if you're in a content farm and you're producing a load of crap just to get numbers because you're selling advertising. But if you want something that's really useful to your clients, then how you title it just needs to be useful to your clients. That's the only rule. Google actually doesn't have any strict rules on that at all. They don't have strict rules on how often a keyword appears. So some SEO people say, if you're wanting to encourage people to find a hypnotherapist in Kent, you have to use the word hypnotherapist in Kent multiple times within your text. And then you read it back and it just sounds awful, because how many times can you mention that phrase without it not sounding real or normal or natural? Google knows the difference. It's almost human in how it reads. So if it doesn't make sense to you when you read it, it's not going to make sense to them, and they actually will rank you lower. So again, it's just about writing stuff that is for humans. If you start tweaking it too much for Google, Google will know, and it's not keen on that, because humans are not keen on that. And there's no strict rules on content length. So I've heard all sorts of advice where they've said, oh, a blog post has to be 300 words, or you have to do something called long form content where you have to write a post that's 1,000 words. I couldn't produce 1,000 words every time I write a blog. Some people say you have to blog every week, or you have to post on Facebook 3 times a day. It's just that, oh my God, is it relevant? You know, is it really useful to the person that's going to be reading it? If not, you're probably wasting your precious, precious time, because it won't bring you business. And that's really what we want this to do. So it's a well thought out article that will actually be useful to the people you're trying to attract to your work. That's going to do it. That's going to do it more. They do all play a role. Don't get me wrong, Google measures these things, but it also measures another 200 things, and it changes those metrics yearly. So unless you're going to keep on top of 200 things that Google looks at, there's only really, you just need to make sure that you're writing for your clients. The rest can get confusing. Big companies hire whole departments to do SEO full time on their websites to get found. You guys can't afford to do that. You know, a good SEO will be, even for one person for a small website, to get somebody to do your SEO for you and to do it really well, you're looking at a starting point of £400 a month. So who's got that kind of money? I haven't. And so it's really important to start getting the hang of writing stuff that's actually just going to be really useful and really good for your consumer. So say, for instance, Julie, do you have an ideal client? Do you have somebody who you want to attract in particular? Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I struggle to think about that actually, Claire, to be honest. But I guess at the moment, yes, it's people that are maybe their lifestyle has changed over lockdown, and they're feeling their mental health is suffering as that.
So if you was going to write an article or post something on one of your website pages or doing an offer for people who are struggling through lockdown, those are the things that will, the word lockdown or Zoom will also help boost it on that sort of thing. But just really being something that gives them a bit of advice, maybe some self-help tips, that sort of thing, that, you know, if you was the person reading this, would you really find it useful?
Yeah.
And would you be interested? People are often afraid of giving stuff away for free because they can't afford not to have the clients. But actually, most of the places I buy from are because I've been almost internet stalking them for a little while, and they've been useful. And I think actually these people really know their stuff. They've got some information. They sound like they know what they're talking about. And then I trust them enough to contact them. So sometimes a website user will hang around and read your stuff for some time, even up to 2 years before they'll contact you, because they'll want to get to know you a bit. So if your website isn't doing that, then it's just an extension of your business card really, and nothing more. So inside your content, as I've said before, it measures whether people click on things. So are they looking around your website to look for other stuff? I apologize for all these like crap animations. When I first did this, I'd never made a keynote speech before, and I discovered it did all these fancy things and I was playing with it. So I apologize for all these arrows and stuff. It measures how much time is spent on the page. It measures the bounce rate. So are they looking at other content on your website as well, or are they looking at just that article and then buggering off somewhere else? And it looks at pogo sticking, which is just when Google makes a mistake. So don't worry about that. So clicks, they're the biggest factor. So if Google presents a list of search results and one of your website pages is on that list, do they click yours or somebody else's? So this is really interesting to Google, because if they don't click yours, why not? They look at how much time they've spent on the page. So if they click yours and they then go to your website, do they hang about there? Or do they go, oh, this isn't what I was expecting, or, oh, this isn't interesting, and go back and search for something else? Do they only visit that page once and then leave? Or do they click and then jump straight back to the search results because they made a mistake? So the rank brain, the AI, the artificial intelligence that we talked about earlier, it collects and uses data from all over Google. So it takes it from, if you've got a local business listing, so you, Julie, you're working from 2 clinics at the moment. So potentially, if you're allowed to have a postcard sent to them, you could have a Google My Business listing for each of those clinic addresses where you work, and you would come up on the map for those. So you can have multiple listings. Google My Business is basically where you can put your business directly on Google locally. They look at adverts. So some people pay to have their adverts shown at the top of the pages, and we've probably all seen ads before when we've searched Google ourselves. And that is useful if you are a local business owner. So if you have people coming to your location, then an ad can be very useful. I wouldn't use an ad for generalized content because it could get very expensive very quickly. But if you've got, say, for instance, if you was looking for booking your car in for an MOT, you would want an MOT garage probably near where you live. So you might put in Google MOTs near me, and the ads will come up first at the top. So I would research, if you was considering paying for Google ads, I'd research carefully first whether it would be worth it for your business. And anyone who knows how to do Google Ads will say it is worth it. But actually, I've found some people who have just ended up spending a lot of money and getting nothing from it. So there are times when it's not always best to pay. Most people can't afford it anyway. Distance. So if you are local, how far away are you from your client? If they're looking for somebody near me and you have got a listing on Google My Business, then you will come up also according to distance. So it's worth being on there if you have people come to you for therapy. There's business listings, which I've already mentioned. There's shopping, so people who sell products, Google will take information from that and display it on the web. And citations, so here we have a lovely Wikipedia entry about Kate Winslet. So if you're top in your field, done TEDx talks, maybe a professor, people come to you for advice, you might be able to get cited on other websites and things like Wikipedia, which will really boost your rankings considerably, but it's hard to get. And the relevance. So basically, if they've typed in, I want to buy a sponge from Tesco's, and they show you soap from Asda, it's irrelevant. So, you know, it's relevant to the search result. And so knowing what kind of things people might be searching for on the internet that you would then pop up under is also a worthy bit of work to do. And it's quite hard because you've got to get into the minds of your clients, potential new clients. A lot of people, when they have their website built, it says, I am a hypnotherapist and I do this hypnotherapy and that hypnotherapy, and here's how you can get in touch. And that doesn't really differentiate you from maybe another hypnotherapy that offers the same things. The only thing that they're going to then look at is price. And then you end up dropping your prices, and you can't afford to be in business anymore. So it's really important that you look at not saying, here I am, this is what I do, but also saying, this is what you might have going on for you, and this is how I help, and these are the results that some people may get. I know that for therapists, it's difficult how you word that because you can't make claims to cure people or anything like that. And if you have a professional body, they can give you advice on these things. But it is important that when people are on the internet, they're in it for themselves. So not talking about yourself and instead talking about who might be reading it and trying to get them to go, oh, that's me, that is. I've been trying to give up smoking for years. I even tried another hypnotherapist and it didn't work. But this lady's got a different technique, she's saying, and she's going to be able to help me, you know, cut down my smoking by half or something like that. However it might work for you, it's all about the user. So phrases that say you get this and you get that instead of I do this and I do that work better. So people who do SEO for other people will often do these things for you, but you can tweak some things in order to get more clicks, but you have to be very careful and not make it what we call clickbait. So for instance, I put in the search here, jelly maker, and we've got Ball Fresh Tech Jam and Jelly Maker from Lakeland, Ball Fresh Tech Jam and Jelly Maker Homemade Jam in 21. Now those sound like the same product. One's from Amazon, one's from Lakeland, but it sounds like the same product. It's a Ball Fresh Tech, but there's several different ways it's been talked about, and one of them says homemade jam. Why do you think they might have put homemade jam there instead of just jam and jelly maker? Because some people might just be searching for homemade jam and they don't know they need a jelly maker. So it's just that tiny little bit of extra information that will resonate with somebody who doesn't know they need a jelly maker, or in your case, doesn't know they need a therapist. But so Roz, you might put kind help and support during pregnancy. I'd have to really understand your business a lot to help you with those phrases. It's worth asking other people who are not in your line of work. And that's where things like the Therapist Network comes in handy, because it's not just hypnotherapists and not just clutter therapists, for instance, or doulas. You can ask somebody who doesn't have anything to do with what you do to have a look at your website, or to have a look at it in search results and see if they would understand what they're getting. because there's a well-known phrase in the marketing world, which is called the curse of knowledge. Dun, 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 sounds really awful, which is basically as soon as you know your business and you know your craft and you've done your skills, you already know too much. So it's difficult then to write from the point of view of somebody who doesn't know anything about what you do. And so it's worth getting some feedback from other people about whether it's really clear what they get out of it. So to tweak to get more clicks, you can change the title of your page or your post. So it's the bit where you say what it's called. And as you can see here, there's two different examples. And if I was looking to make homemade jam, I might skip that top one and go to the next one because it specifically says homemade jam. So you can tweak your title according to the reason you've written the article or the page in the first place. You can also tweak something called a snipper, which is also known as metadata. And I know some website builders, WordPress let you do it, Wix let you do it, and it's just that little bit of blurb. They sometimes call it an excerpt as well. So there's all different words for it, but it's just that little bit of blurb that shows underneath the search result. That's what those are. And so sometimes Google will just pick some of its own that it thinks is most relevant if you haven't specified any. So it won't ever be blank there. Google also has one last trick up its sleeve, and this is the one that's going to be quite important to you guys, and that's eat. And it uses humans for this. And this is new for Google. So Google normally does everything via robot. So nearly half of the internet now is all artificial intelligence. Less than half of the internet use is human. But they do use humans to look at this particular part. Again, I discovered I could add fancy things in, so I apologise for this. So it's YMYL, and it's your money or your life. So basically what the humans have been trained to do is they've been told, we think this website might need checking under the EAT guidelines. Go look at it and tell me, would you trust these people with your credit card? That's the only question these humans have to answer. So it's your money or your life looks at expertise. They compare you to other competitors. So if you're a hypnotherapist and there's other hypnotherapists, they will look at other hypnotherapists, not just local to you, but local on the internet. So they'll put in a search for hypnotherapists where you come up and where anybody else who's a hypnotherapist comes up, and they will compare you to your online competitors. They're only interested in the internet in this instance. They will look at any medical claims that you have on your website, and they will check if it is backed up by scientific research. So if you are claiming anything, even if it's mild, and you know it comes from a good source, it's worth linking to that, because that will make it easier for them to see that you are actually telling the truth. Are you known? Do you go other places on the internet and put your content there? Have you written anything for other websites? They look to see if you are, or whether you use, world-renowned authors. That should say, it says renounced, apologies. We want renowned authors. So it's worth being an expert in your field. If you do a lot of CPD, I would certainly put that on your website. Are you looking after the safety of your users? Is that clear in the content? So are you talking about how, particularly at the moment with COVID, if you're seeing clients face to face, what measures you've put in place, what your regulations are you're following? Are you looking after user safety? If you've listed qualifications, are they verifiable? So is there somewhere, have you put a photo of your certificate up, or is there some link that goes to your university if you've got a degree? Is there somewhere it can be verified that you're qualified? And have you published anything? Are you in a magazine article anywhere? Have you been in the news? Have you appeared on the radio? Anything that you do that's to do with your business, it's worth writing about and putting something about, because it'll all help you be seen as your expert. I know a lot of therapists that do a lot of CPD. They do a lot of extra training. I mean, if I look at their website, I wouldn't have a clue. I wouldn't have known. And that all helps build your credibility as well. So it's worth it. Don't be shy. We find it really hard to blow our own trumpets in this country, but it's worth doing it a bit on your website for sure. I would trust somebody who could show they were qualified. Authority. Do you have authority in your field? Are there excellent links coming of people linked your website and said, hey, go check out this person, they're really good? This one's a difficult one for small businesses. Do other experts cite you in their writing? So that can be tricky. Do you give your personal experiences instead of just blindly offering advice? So have you told your story? A lot of therapists, I find, go into therapy to help people with a problem they've had themselves in the past. So have you told your story? Have you told story of other clients with their permission or without any identifying details? Case studies are quite useful here if they're allowed in your type of therapy. Are people commenting with positive experiences on your website? Is there any conversation going on? I wrote an article on the Therapist Network about using Zoom for your therapy business. And I said at the bottom, if you've got any questions about how to do it, or you have any tech support advice you need, just ask in the comments. And it went ping, 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 ping. Normally a blog I'd write on that website would get 300 or 400 views in a month. This one got 2,500. So people were making conversation. Google went, something's going on here. I'm going to show it to more people that might need those questions answered. So it was quite handy. And it bumped up, then other pages on the website started to bump up because of the popularity of that one article. So if you do write a blog now and then, and it doesn't necessarily work, please don't give up. If you change your pages on your website now and then and it doesn't necessarily work, don't give up. I tell people when we're working on their SEO that if you want to be found what's called organically, so without paying, then it can take up to 3 years to really start getting known and to get the feelers out there and to do the work, because you're also doing the work of servicing your clients. And so your SEO work or your marketing work will be something that you might do once a week. So don't ever give up on it, because the more you keep banging away at it, the more you grow as a person, and your website and your business will grow and evolve with you. So it all goes together as you grow. Have you been mentioned in any news articles anywhere? So it's worth applying to local newspapers or things like that, especially if you've got something that's unusual or different, or that might relate to a lot of people now in this current circumstances. If you are on a website that you're authoring for somebody else, have you got a bio? So if you write something for another website, you need a quality author bio, which is a small little snippet, usually a picture, and it says something along the lines of it's like your little mini introduction. So there'll usually be a paragraph or something on I say something along the lines of, I come from a tech background, do business coaching, and I also like camping in the woods with my son. So and there's usually a link to my website, something like that. How old is your business and your website? So new businesses and new websites find it hard to rank at first. Older websites that have been around for a while, they will naturally start to go up the rankings a little bit anyway, because the website is still around. So therefore you should be better at what you're doing by now. So they know that how long you've been doing your work for matters. Just the age of a website doesn't necessarily do it. It has to be an up-to-date website. So some people build a website, then don't do their business anymore and leave the website there to go old and never touch it again. So it has to be something that's been updated. You've logged in, changed something, done something on it. Are you on Wikipedia for your particular, are you famous? Again, a tricky one to get onto. There's very strict rules for Wikipedia, but if you are top in your field or you get to that point, then it's worth applying for it, because that can get you some good rankings. And trustworthiness. Would I give you my credit card? Can I trust you? So on your website alone, are you being authentic? Are you being yourself? Or do you at least appear to be? And I think a lot of business owners are frightened of being authentic because they think it might put people off. but actually it's what differs you to the person next door with the similar website. So being unique and individual is actually a bonus here. Has your business, or you as a business owner, got a good reputation? Have people written any Google reviews if they're allowed for your type of work? Are they good? People quite often very easily get Facebook reviews for their business page. It doesn't really help. But if you can get Google reviews, then that can really help. I don't know if you've ever seen Facebook come up in, or any other social media sites come up in search results. You'll get a bit of a snippet, but then if you want to go see it, you have to log into that website to do it. And it's not your website, it's Facebook. So it's worth putting things like this on your own website, and Google reviews help that because they know who you are and where you are. Has anybody heard of SSL?
No.
So it stands for Secure Socket Layer, and it's basically, if you type in a website, it might have a little padlock at the top. Has anybody seen a padlock when they've gone to buy something online?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because it's got a security certificate attached to the website address. If your website says HTTP at the beginning, you don't have it. If it says HTTPS, you do have it, and I recommend you do, because even if you don't take payment details or personal information directly on your website, Google very usefully has said to people, if it has HTTP and not the S, this website might be insecure. People might be trying to steal your data. Are you sure you want to go ahead? You may have seen that yourself. It doesn't mean that they actually are. It just means they haven't got a secure certificate. So whoever hosts your website should be able to provide that for you if you don't have one. They're about 50 quid a year. Some website providers provide it with the website, so it all depends on who you're with. So it's worth getting, just because otherwise people who land on your website might think that you're unsafe, which is a real pain in the bum, because what it really only means is if you're taking their data, if you're taking payment online or something like that. But most people don't understand that. If your website says it's unsafe, they just disappear. If you've got the padlock unlocked and it's red, they might just disappear. They don't really understand what that means. So it's worth having, just to stop that from happening. Are you insured? Do you talk about your insurance? Do you mention somewhere in your About Me page or something that you are fully insured and what insurance you've got and what you're covered for? That can help build your trustworthiness and credibility. Do you talk about how you help people, or is it all sales funnel? Is it really obvious that you're just trying to get them to buy something? So I don't get this with many therapists. In fact, it's usually the polar opposite. They're not salesy enough. But you know, it's worth making sure that if you've got advice that's like, oh, you need to get them to clickbait and then go into this funnel and then drop into that where you charge them for something more expensive. And most people are clued up on those sorts of things. So it's more about giving people information that's good for them, that's useful for them. And then they'll go, yeah, I trust this person. Actually, I might book. That's the longer way to do it, but it's just like a friendship. You wouldn't go to a stranger and say, here, will you look after my handbag, please? But you would do it to somebody who you'd gotten to know and trust. It's the same with your website. You're talking to strangers here. They need to get to know you a bit. And low quality funnels, which is the thing I've been talking about, where you just get like somebody might produce something for free that's not very good, to get your email address and then start advertising to you something more expensive. And then you might do that, and then they go on to the uber expensive thing. I'm not keen on that method of marketing. That's a personal opinion. It works for a lot of people when it's done well. I prefer something called the flywheel method, which is where you use customer referral to and word of mouth, and that tends to work really well for therapists. Word of mouth. Most people I know have said, oh, they've recommended me. So things that you should do first if you are looking at improving your website: have some valuable content. Can you give some tips and advice, some things that people would be really useful to have? Can you let them know what you know and how it's actually going to help them? When you're writing a title, try to keep it to about 60 characters or a tweet to explain what's going on in the page, because otherwise in the search results, it just goes ... and you can't see the rest anyway. So it's worth keeping it shortish. Be authentic. Just be yourself. Speak on there like you would normally speak. I swear a lot. I don't put that on my website necessarily, but I do type in the way that I talk, because then when you meet me, it's not going to cause this disconnect. You'll know that I was writing my stuff myself, and it increases your trustworthiness. And if you have any claims or qualifiers, then make sure that you can cite evidence of that. You know, so say, for instance, I wrote an article that said 20% of people who do this will get an increase in their sales. I'd need to prove where I got that information from. I'm not just plucking ideas from thin air in order to get you to buy my product. Now, this one's often missed. Your homepage. Does it clearly state what you do and why you do it? Remember, when someone comes to your website, they're in it for themselves. What's in it for them? Why are you passionate? Why do you love what you do? Put a bit of your personality into it. Does your homepage give opportunities for people to explore the rest of the website? So have you got words that are linked to other articles or pages that talk about it? Have you got a menu? Are you suggesting other things that people go look at? And do you have pages with a call to action? So when you write something, do you then say, oh, get in touch if you'd like to find out more by ringing me, or put a comment down below if you think this works for you. Have you tried it? That sort of thing. You may have read that sort of thing before. It's good to have a call to action. It's good not to just put one that says contact me, because most people don't. They're already wanting to buy by the time they contact you. So things like that are usually like, have you tried this yourself? Let me know if you try it and it works. You know, tell me your feedback. That sort of thing is good, because it tries to encourage conversation. That could be quite scary as well if you're not confident in yourself, but do it. I'm an expert with WordPress, so I don't know about other website builders, but you can turn your comments on and you can have them moderated. So if somebody posts a comment on something, it will hold it until you've looked at it and approved it. So if you're nervous, you can just have that on. So people don't just randomly, because sometimes they get spammed. So you need anti-spam. Is your site useful and usable for real human beings, real people? Poor SEO advice often gets you writing for Google and not for people. Is it using clear language? Is it simple with no jargon? Or if you have to have jargon, do you explain it? Quite often people will link their professional body and they'll literally just put the 4 letters that their professional body represents, so like CTHA or something like that. Well, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? So the more information, the better. You can't have too much information. Just don't give away private details. Is it focused on the website user at all times? So again, what's in it for them? How are you helping them? Are you using the word you get, you have, you will find? We've got to stop talking about ourselves and start talking about them. Oh, bugger. Ranking on Google looks like a lot of work. Don't panic. Your website is a journey, just like your business, just like your life. And you can just do it one step at a time. Baby steps. Thank you. Questions? I don't know how long I was talking for.
Wow, thank you, Claire. That was brilliant. So much information, goodness.
Yeah, sorry.
Do we record the questions and answers?
I'm happy to. I don't mind if everybody else is happy to.
Yeah, I've muted everybody, so if you want to unmute yourself to ask a question, please feel free. Yeah, Claire, there was so much information there. Something that when you were talking about the SSL, the secure socket layer, I remember when this came up, and my website I've done myself through a template through a company called Weebly. And of course, I went there thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do this? I don't know how to do it. And you know what? There was a simple button that they put on there, SSL, either tick or not, and you just ticked it, and then your site was secure, which apparently was quite an unusual thing, because I spoke to a web designer and they said, blimey, you know, this takes so much work on websites to do that. That's impressive.
Really?
So, yeah, so
mine, I just rang my host and said I want an SSL, and they said, okay, we'll do it, here's the bill. So
well, mine was, I don't think I had to pay any extra, actually, even for that. I pay an annual hosting and whatnot, but
yeah,
pay any extra. So it might not be as difficult as it seems sometimes, I think, but that was a relief when that happened. I'm pretty sure I had some questions. Has anybody else got any questions?
I'd just like to say thanks, Claire. That was so comprehensive. Thank you very much. I mean,
you're welcome.
You presented it actually in a usable format. You've given us hints and tips all the way along as when we want to do this. This is the sort of thing we've got to look at. It's really interesting, the bit about focused on the user, not what you can do, because it's got to be it's a hard balance, isn't it? You've got to tell them what you can do. But yeah, so I never thought, well, my website, I do have a website, but you know, I've left it to somebody else to do it, and I will do it in the future. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else got any other questions? There's a lot of stunned silence.
It was a lot of information. I apologize. I know it is, but that was me paring it down as much as I could. There's so much that Google does and looks at that it gets really complicated really quickly.
No, I think it's great, because if you can simplify it, we can start to feel more confident that we can tackle it then.
Yeah.
Rather than it seeming too big an issue to do.
What was you going to say, Lorraine? Sorry.
I was just saying, sorry, I left. I had a plumber turned up unexpectedly, wanting to look at something, so I had to take him to the kitchen. So apologies for that.
That's okay, Lorraine. Well, if you want to, Lorraine, because we've recorded the talk, it will go up on the website probably within a few days or so. So if you want to watch the whole thing back, you will be able to, which is useful.
So I apologise as well, because there was one point where it was playing a video and I accidentally clicked the next slide thing and it cut it short, which was the broken link checker. But if you just go to brokenlinkcheck.com, it's quite self-explanatory. But if you get stuck, you know, just drop me an email. I'm happy to help and advise anyone that gets stuck with any of the tips that I've given. It's always interesting to go on Google and have a look and see what your website's ranked, what's been indexed so far, especially if you've got a new one. One thing that did occur to me that I didn't have in the slide is that obviously Google finds information via links on your site to look for other information on your website and index those pages as well. But how it starts in the first place, has anybody got a brand new website? So you might be all right.
Yeah,
so
I have.
You have, Carol. So the difficult thing can be, it's a bit like when you've got a job with no experience yet, how do you get a job? It's the similar sort of thing, like how do you get indexed if none of the pages have been indexed yet? Google will look at any pages and will index it if someone else has looked at it too that isn't you. Okay. So I always find that posting in something like one of the groups on Therapist Network or in a networking meeting, asking them to, giving them your website address and saying, can you just like spell check it or see if there's any errors? Because one, people love pointing out errors and it's handy for you as well to fix any. But two, they then end up looking at all of your content and so it all gets indexed.
Yeah, I was going to launch it and I was going to launch it on my Facebook page as well. So it goes to everybody and say what they actually thought about it. So can you just have a look at this? What do you think? What could be improved? And that's what I was going to do.
Yeah, that's good, because that'll tweak Google's attention, so long as they do click on it and go look at it.
Yeah, I'll make sure they do.
Yeah, do tell them.
Brilliant. Any other questions?
My
Fantastic.
job is done.
Well, thank you so much. That was so good. Yes, I think a round of applause for Claire.
Well done.
Thank
Well done,
you.
Claire.
You have a knack of being able to encourage people to have a go at things by simplifying, and I think that's such a skill. Actually, it's
Thank you.
people well, it is. It's giving us the confidence to think, right, okay, I could do that bit. I could do that bit, even if we can't do the overall stuff.
Really, for me, it's just write stuff. Just write stuff and put it on your website. You know, don't worry if it's a bit shit or you think, because there's a lot of perfectionists in the network. I don't know if you guys are, but there's a lot of perfectionists that like, oh, this might not sound professional enough, but actually, if it's more human, if there is the odd mistake, then, you know, by all means use a spell checker or something. But, you know, if you're just talking like you're you, then there's no nasty surprise if you're a different person when they walk in the door. If they've booked you because they've read about you on your website and you've written in a style that doesn't sound like you and isn't authentic, then they may not hang around when they meet you because you seem like a different person. It's subconscious, it's not a conscious thing. There's just like this kind of disconnect that happens. Whereas if you write as yourself and you come from a place of love and compassion and you really care about the people that you're trying to help and you tell them about how you do that, then that's, you know, what's better than that?
Yeah, authenticity, it makes such a difference, even down to your photograph that people see online. If you don't look anything like that on a daily basis, it can be really off-putting, can't it, when you meet somebody and you think, well, that doesn't look like the person in the picture.
So I spent 25 years as a photographer, and one of the things that I can advise is that when you have your photograph taken, you will look at it and think, God, that doesn't look like me, because you're used to seeing yourself in a mirror, which is actually a reverse image, and photographs are not mirrored. So you will look like you to other people in the photograph. You just won't look like you to you. And anything that's slightly higher than eye level is more flattering and hides any chins that might be going on. I've got a couple. And so, but one thing that I do find when people ask me for help with their websites is there's just no picture of the person at all. And how's that building trustworthiness if I don't even know what you look like, especially if I've got to come visit you? That makes me really nervous if I don't book people I can't see.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it does tend to be whether you're kind of a fairly visual person, but if I'm booking to go and see somebody, or especially if it was a therapist, actually, I would want to know what they look like before I went to see them. I actually had a very interesting call with a client recently, and I asked, they were calling for their daughter, and I asked, you know, could you just tell me how you found me, because I'm just interested and I'm doing a little bit of research at the moment. And she said, oh, we've looked at so many, and it was your picture that made the difference. My daughter looked at your picture and said, well, she looks nice. And I thought, with all that jazz that goes on around websites and listings and profiles, and it was just, I looked friendly in the picture, which was nice. But it was,
and that's it.
I thought it was interesting.
There's two jobs your website's got to do. It's got to be found, and then you've got to get the customer in the door once they've found you. It's like a shop window.
Yeah, that was a bit of an eye-opener for me, actually, because although I do that myself, I don't necessarily think everybody else is doing that. So
people still buy people. That's the thing. People buy people first.
Yeah. And if you haven't updated your website for a little while, have a little look at it, but please don't beat yourself up. I don't think I've done mine in 2 months now because I was busy working. So life does get in the way, but just try and remember it now and then and pop back to it. We were having a really good discussion in the virtual cafe, actually, with people were saying, like, how many times should you post a blog? And the advice is generally poor advice, which is you should do it at least once a week. Then you should email it out to everybody, and it should be at least 1,000 words. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to commit to that. No way. Like, so I post when I've got something worth saying. And actually then when I do that, I put more effort into the article. It's usually read by more people because it is more interesting. That's my rule. And if it means I don't post for months because I've been busy, then I don't post. Because I've got a life to lead and a business to run.
But I
Obviously,
think also if
sorry.
you're on the receiving end of that and you're getting bombarded by newsletters and posts constantly, after a while you just unsubscribe, or you just don't even look. You just
yeah. Well, I've got there's a business coach who I follow, who I'm currently working with, and she sends an email out every week, and a majority of them I just stick straight in the delete, because I haven't got time to read a blog post every week, even though they are really good blog posts and they're really good quality and good content. I don't necessarily read them all, because I don't unsubscribe, because sometimes it might be like, oh, that's relevant to me right now. But, you know, and just so take notice of your own behavior on the internet. And realize that your website is part of that internet, and people will behave around you and your website in a similar way. We all skim. We all only want to look at something that we go, oh yeah, that's me. I'm like that. And so will your users be. And so just having something that says, here I am, it's what I do, and then hope that the money comes rolling in the door, it's not going to work. And that's why I ended up doing this, because people would come say, I need a website. Can you build me a website, please? And I'd go, what do you want it for? And they'd be like, what? Because I'm ticking my list off of things I should have for my business, right? I've done my Facebook page, done my website. I want my website. I've got my business name. I've printed a business card. And I'm like, yeah, but what do you want it to do? It's like an employee. It's either going to just be a leaflet online, in which case, fine. You will be the person who sends people to your website because you've given them your business card. Or if you want people to stumble across you, then it needs a bit more work. It needs to become a part of you and a part of your business and a part of your growth alongside you. And it's people, you can't just tick it off a list and leave it. It doesn't work that way. Not if that's what you want it to do.
Brilliant. I'm going to take this off of record now, Claire. So let me just stop recording.